Hey everybody, rough day out there in the markets, and everybody got kicked in the teeth. I got kicked in the teeth hard, so I just hope everybody's okay out there. This was the worst day for the Nasdaq in at least a couple of years, 2 or 3 years, and today I'm going to talk about whether or not we capitulated. I hinted at that last week. Per Jeremy Siegel, we need to flush out the market with one hard hit. We may have got that today, and let's look at some indicators that I see in the marketplace. So first of all, let's jump in. Did we capitulate? I'm going to talk about crypto, equities, correlation between markets, how things have performed over the last couple of months, how bad things are or good things are. We'll see. Let's jump in. Math, money, and freedom. And disclaimer, none of this is financial advice. Now, just to lighten the mood first, it is Cinco de Mayo. So I want to wish everybody, wherever you are, a happy Cinco de Mayo, 5th of May, 5-5, whether you're in Europe or here. So I hope that helps. And jumping into fives, I'm interested in numbers. I thought, just to get our minds off the market for a split second, a starfish has 5 arms. A worm has 5 hearts. Hinduism, 5 is a symbol of planet Earth, and 5 in numerology is characterized by curiosity. 5 is the number of vowels in the English alphabet. And Confucius said, most important lesson everybody today is to practice 5 things under all circumstances constitutes perfect virtue. This is gravity, generosity of the soul, sincerity, earnestness, and kindness. We try to follow those 5 here in this channel. So let's jump in. Now, yesterday, apologies, on Monday, I expected a rally after the rate hike news, and I expected it to last maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks. I didn't expect it to flick around immediately the next day. So you can see here, Bitcoin dropped to the lowest level in over 2 months, and Dow plunges more than 1,000 points. That's what happened. It was at a very quick reversal, and I've been looking at markets for more than 30 years. I haven't seen this at all happen so fast, and it could be because we had a jobs report that didn't help the markets very much, but we were looking for that capitulation event. Now, cryptocurrency, as you mentioned, Bitcoin fell down to about 36.6, even lower during the day, and it recovered a little bit. And what else went on? Dow Jones over 1,000 points, etc. We'll talk more about some of those markets, etc. But is this the washout we were looking for? Even great names like Google are getting smashed down at $2,300 when the enterprise value alone is nearly $2,800. Things are definitely very oversold when it comes to good, solid, disruptive names. They are now beyond value stock territory. So let's talk about the mechanics of what happened today. Dow fell 1,120 points. S&P 4%, 3.7%. Nasdaq 5.2%, worst day since 2020, and Bitcoin 8.5%, fell down 3,400 to 36,300. Again, in 30 years, over 30 years, looking at the markets, I've never seen anything like this. It's beyond volatile. It is an absolute kick in the teeth. So just hope everybody's okay out there. Now, to try and make sense of exactly what happened, yesterday, when the announcement first came from the Fed, markets tanked. And that may have been a signal for people to kind of go short. And maybe the huge rally afterwards of 1,000 points was because people saw the rally happening, started going, and they had to cover the shorts, and that was called a melt up. And now, after kind of the news of jobs report and everything today, maybe that's why we had the backlash from yesterday. Who knows? Let's look at some more things as well, just to put things in perspective. I know people are freaking out there, especially if you're relatively new to this game, but this was an interesting analysis I put together. So we had 2 major bottoms so far this year, January 24th and February 24th. February 24th, 23rd was actually the day of the invasion. And but if you look at these key names here, just some of the big names I pulled out, a couple of interesting things to note. One, all names have been lower so far this year, with the exception of Google and Amazon. You can see here, Bitcoin was lower on the 24th of January and February, and it's above those levels. So we still have that higher low, as it were. So we've been here before, not too long ago. What's interesting now, though, looking at these percentages, is Google and Bitcoin are down exactly 19.5% year to date. Tesla is the least affected by this downturn, and Ethereum and Amazon, peculiarly, are also down 27% each. So I always try and look for patterns and numbers, and I thought that was very bizarre that these two big assets are down the exact same amount year to date. Uncanny how things work. But anyway, tomorrow I expect things to be a little bit different. Let's talk about crypto liquidations. And hit this drives, you can see the cascading losses, liquidations bringing the crypto prices down. And another stunning observation from today, we had $330 million liquidated over the last 12 hours. It was mostly Bitcoin, Ethereum, and ApeCoin. So talk about people going full degen. Nearly $10 million in ApeCoin liquidations from the long side in the last 12 hours. That's more than all the other cryptos like Solana, Binance, Cardano, etc. that would be in the mix. That was surprising. Now, let's talk about a bit of some kind of good news. I was watching the LFG wallet for the last nearly 3 weeks. Zero action. And I knew Do Kwon committed to spending 10 billion. But today it was announced they did increase their reserve by another $1.5 billion in Bitcoin. So now it's about $3.3 billion. But let's break that down and what it actually looks like. So what it means is they did promise, Do Kwon did promise to buy $10 billion worth of Bitcoin. Obviously, it's going to fluctuate because of the price of Bitcoin fluctuates. But that's their target. They bought nothing since April 14th this year. But this last big tranche of transactions of 1.5 billion Bitcoin was done OTC, over the counter. So markets weren't moved like the last few transactions. The LFG reserve now holds $3.5 billion in Bitcoin, and the transaction was made up of $1 billion in an OTC swap with Genesis, which is a crypto broker, for $1 billion worth of UST. So they used UST to buy Bitcoin, and also 3 Arrows Capital, 3AC. They bought $500 million worth of Bitcoin from that hedge fund as well. Drinking some tea here. So where is LFG today and where are they going? So LFG now holds 3.5 billion in Bitcoin. That is 80,394 coins. Remember, people like Michael Saylor have about 129,000 Bitcoin. So they're getting there. They are now equivalent of wallet number 7 per the Bitcoin rich list. And they own, according to me, because they'll never be more than 14 million Bitcoin, about 0.57% of all Bitcoin. And as a comparison, at the end of this, they're going to own more than Michael Saylor by our simple calculations. Again, the end game is 10 billion of Bitcoin. So they need to buy 175,000 more Bitcoin at today's prices to get to that level of 10 billion, which would be approximately double what Saylor has in MicroStrategy. That's going to be big. It looks like they're going to do it, but they have a long way to go. And they're short about $6.7 billion. And where are they going to get that? Well, we'll see. Anyway, in some other news from Bloomberg, just to illustrate, it may not seem like it, but I always try to find a silver lining where I can. But per Bloomberg report, Bitcoin is going risk off. And when they look at the adoption, the maturation of Bitcoin is actually beating equities. And I've spoken about this a few times, but I never saw an article from Bloomberg actually saying, yes, we are going risk off. So in this chart here, you've got a couple of things. You've got the Bitcoin 90-day volatility index in white divided by the Nasdaq 100 stock index volatility index and the Bitcoin over Nasdaq 100 stock index. And you can see here, obviously, Bitcoin is becoming less volatile as we go forward. So these are just year-to-date numbers. And the Nasdaq has suffered more than 20% downturn. And Bitcoin is only down 15%. And the volatility of Bitcoin is less, even after a day like today. Let's confirm that with another chart. Here is Bitcoin versus the Nasdaq over the last 90 days. The red is Bitcoin and the blue is Nasdaq. You can see Bitcoin is still up over the last 90 days. It's up 6.3%. And the Nasdaq is actually down 13%, more than double the the loss. So that is kind of staggering. And that proves, yes, maybe we're getting into that risk off territory. And if that ever does happen, it'll be a great boon for Bitcoin. But let's dig a little bit deeper, look at some options action for Bitcoin, if we can kind of decipher where we're going to go next. Now, per Crypto Quant, a long squeeze is potentially in play. Now, you've heard me talk about short squeezes a lot. I rarely talk about long squeezes because they're quite rare. But this is a massive leverage flush event where long liquidations cascade together. And such a squeeze can drive the price down and above instances that have been marked by this squeeze. So if you look at the red lines here, they mark historical high funding rates where there's been a surge upwards and then a dip. Now, it doesn't happen in all cases. For example, if you look here at the 10th of March, it's the middle red line. You can see it was followed by a big rally over the subsequent month. So it doesn't always indicate that. But we may have had some of this capitulation already, this cascading liquidations of Bitcoin sellers by that 330 million across all crypto that we saw liquidated. So from that perspective, we've been waiting for this flush out. Jeremy Siegel from Wharton said, we're close to the bottom. I estimate the S&P 500 bottom could be about 4,000. We're approximately 100 points away from that, maybe even closer. So I think chances are we might be close. So this is a time to maybe fish a little bit. Now, to confirm the bearish sentiment from the options action, you can see here from this chart, stuff I spoke about before, the foils, which looks at the open interest, the funding rate, and the long-short ratio. You can see that everything all across the board is bearish for open interest, long-short ratio, bearish, and 3 for the funding rate. You can see the funding rate varies depending on where you look, but the funding rate here for all assets are neutral with the exception of XRP, Dogecoin, and Near Protocol. So that's extra bullish for those 3 as we go forward. Now let's talk about another little bit of political news, which came out today. You have a lady called Elizabeth Warren. She's a senator in the US. She is livid about Bitcoin, and there's a funny meme of her floating around Twitter. But she is up in arms about how angry she is about Fidelity potentially allowing individual investors to put Bitcoin in their retirement accounts, which is so bizarre because I just proved that actually Bitcoin is less volatile than Nasdaq stocks. So I don't know what she's looking at. Anyway, her concern is if individual investors put money into 401k, they would risk their entire retirement savings account. People know not to put all their eggs in one basket, etc. And she has gone out directly to Fidelity to ask them to assess the risks of volatility, fraud, theft, and the evolving regulatory environment for Bitcoin and how Fidelity will address them to protect people. But I don't think she's trying to protect individual investors. You know, we're all grown-ups here. We know markets are tough. We know investing is a blood sport. But I don't know what her agenda is. Maybe there's some bank behind her trying to keep Bitcoin out of the hands of retail investors. But as we'll see very shortly, politicians like this will have to change their tune or go find another job real fast. Now, in counterpoint to that, Michael Saylor came out and said, Bitcoin is the least risky thing to have in a retirement portfolio. And he actually said this before, I think, Warren went on a rampage. So it was good timing where they said it simultaneously. I'm not sure. But according to Michael Saylor, to call Bitcoin digital gold is an understatement. It is the hardest money in the history of the world. As I say, ultra scarce, ultra hard. There's nothing better. But if you're thinking about generational wealth and you want to leave something to someone for your grandchildren, etc., or in a retirement fund, there is no better way than Bitcoin. And that was per Michael Saylor. And he also spoke, I think, about the fact that, you know, it is better than even a hard commodity. I think I touched on that the other day, but I can't remember exactly what he said. So I won't even try. Now, in terms of mainstreamification news, Joe Rogan came out and he said, Bitcoin is now a viable currency. And Joe Rogan has had people try to convince him against Bitcoin, try to convince him pro-Bitcoin, etc. But he is probably one of the most relevant media outlets today. He has more views than all the big cable TV shows and etc. But this supports the mainstreamification of Bitcoin. And if you don't know Joe, he's on the Joe Rogan Experience, and he compares Bitcoin to the early internet, early web. And he also noticed that digital money, which is Bitcoin, is a feasible way to buy stuff. And he said you can really purchase things with it. And he said the public is also, the authorities are going nuts, which is a sign that it's a good thing. And I think he also spoke about the fact that back in the day, President Obama tried to regulate the internet, and that was a bad thing, and he was very against that too. So fingers crossed. Now, in related news on mainstreamification of Bitcoin, 1/3 of all Britons have used crypto in a recent Coinbase report, and Britons are buying Bitcoin and Dogecoin too, apparently. But it found that 61% of people in the United Kingdom who already own cryptocurrency plan to increase the size of their positions, up from 54% a year ago to 61% now, which is positive. And of that group, 2/3 plan to increase their position in cryptocurrency because they're already holding, versus just 23% that wish to expand into new assets. So very positive stuff out of Europe, United Kingdom, and I know that Bitcoin and crypto is even more popular in places like the Netherlands and Germany. So Europe is catching on, and Europe is losing faith in their European Central Bank and Christine Lagarde and others, especially when you see the weakness in the euro compared to the dollar just over the past 90 days. So let's look at the smart contract platforms. This is interesting. If you look at, I like to track exactly what's going on over 30-day, 90-day, 7-day, and 24-hour periods. Luna, of all the SCPs, has held up the best. Ethereum is second and Solana third over the last 24 hours. And over the last 90 days, it's been very hard for certain names like Algorand and Cosmos, and who else at the bottom of the list, 90 days. But those names are also kind of hit pretty hard of late. So we'll see where all this is going to go. But interesting to see how Luna, after a day like today, obviously they're being boosted by the LFG news and having that Bitcoin-backed stablecoin. So fingers crossed they can get to that $10 billion mark. Now, in personal security news, $36 million was lost in a simple typo. The typo moves $36 million and seized Juno tokens to the wrong wallet. Now, we always say, triple check the address and always do a small test first. Even sophisticated crypto experts can screw up. And remember, when you ship 36 million or $10 to a wrong wallet or whatever, it can be gone forever. And this is supposed to be from the wallet of a large whale to become an airdrop. And rather than send the funds to an address controlled by the Juno community as originally planned, a programming mix-up sent the funds to the wrong address on Wednesday, and those funds are probably lost forever and irrecoverable. So again, be careful out there. Yes, Elizabeth Warren is correct that there are dangerous aspects to crypto, but if you want to be self-sovereign, just make sure you know to take the necessary precautions before you lose your crypto. And I know many, many people who have actually shipped stuff to the wrong address, but always, again, double check, triple check the address and test first with a tiny amount. Make sure it gets there before you send the rest. Okay, now a little bit of Twitter news. This kind of got a lot of headlines today as well. Binance is putting a lot of money behind Elon Musk's Twitter, as well as Sequoia, my former boss's boss. Larry Ellison put in $1 billion, and a whole bunch of other names like A16Z, Qatar Fund, Fidelity, everybody's in there. And the question is, what's going to happen next? Now, a lot of people are concerned that, oh my God, mainstream media is going to be controlled by all these multi-billionaires and big corporations, but that's just the nature of the beast. So I think Elon Musk will do good things for freedom of speech and Twitter to go forward. So I'm very bullish in this. And it looks like it's all solved now. So with that, everybody, DCA is tomorrow on Ben's channel. Make sure you tune in. I'll notify everybody on Twitter and in the community as well first thing tomorrow. But have a good evening. I'm sorry it's grief tidings, but we may not be at the bottom. But one thing is for sure is, per a lot of the indicators that we see, we've got to be close. And this 2022 is always going to be pegged as a rough year. It's going to be a sideways, choppy market. But again, some things will do very, very well. I'm still convinced. We just don't know when they're going to move. But the next 2-3 months, until the Fed gets all of the interest hikes out of the way, we just have to sit tight and be prepared for the choppiness. So with that, everybody, have a good night. Thank you so much for being here. Bye.